Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby, and of course, we talk with people who are going to help our small and medium-sized nonprofits do good better, what you could all do a little better at. And if you're sort of starting off as a nonprofit, you're a smaller nonprofit, you can always sort of search for the one thing that I think clouds everybody's crazy brain in what to do first and what to do second is grants. It's the thing you see everybody else getting, and you haven't gotten in on the action. Why? It's a very confusing place to live if you haven't been there. So that is why today, my friends, we have a super expert, not even like an expert, like a super expert on the subject today, Libby Hikind. She is the founder of Grant Watch. Libby, welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast.
Thank you. I'm so very happy to be here and help your listeners, and let's get them grants.
I love this really well. This is great. Okay. Before we start and we dive into all the details, because I know every one of you have pens and paper at the ready, or you are ready to type out all the dirty details that we're going to talk about today, there's probably a few people who are listening that have no idea what even on earth this is. So, Libby, can we start with a very 5,000-foot view on who you are, what you do, and why we're talking today?
Well, I am the founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com. And GrantWatch lets nonprofits, businesses, and individuals know what grants are available. Now, years ago, you could go to a library and look up all the foundations and spend hours and hours and then contact them and find out if they're willing to give you money. And that's a tremendous task, and it's futile. What GrantWatch does is we gather all the currently available grants. And they come out, then they expire sometimes. Some are ongoing, some expire, and we archive them and we keep putting up new ones. And that's why GrantWatch is so special, because you don't have to go doing all that research of the foundations and the government agencies. You can just come to GrantWatch and do your search there. So, but I think the first question we better answer for your listeners and your viewers is, what is a grant?
It's a great place to start. I love this. Yes.
Okay. So a grant is a gift, basically, but it is a gift with strings. You don't pay back a grant, but you must do everything you tell the funding source that you plan to do. If you don't do it and you use the money to buy yourself a nice Jaguar, then you are going to jail. So you need to know that when you get a grant, you're saying, you're applying for the grant. Nobody gives you a grant that you didn't apply for. So if you get one of those phone calls, hang up. Those are fake. Okay. And so what you need to do is apply for the grant, explain exactly what you're going to do with the funds, and do that. If something should change along the way, you want to contact the funding source and say, hey, we got these donations for these 23 laptops that we were going to use that's in our budget. And instead, we would like to purchase internet service for a year. We would like to purchase screens because we don't want them just on laptops. We want them to see the big picture. Or we want to purchase those pens so they can draw on the laptops. Whatever it is, a budget mod. So a grant is a gift. There are no taxes to a grant, right? And well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not an accountant, so erase that, please. Okay.
No financial advice behind. Yeah. Put an asterisk to that point of the thing. But it's true. It's just sort of like, hey, here's what you have. Here's what you applied for. Here's some money, but here's all the things you said you do it for.
Right. And usually you have to send in some evaluation to your grant, and you have to explain how the money was spent and whether you achieve those objectives. So this is all, and the funding source can advertise with the fact that they gave you a grant. It could be in the newspaper, and then somebody sees that you all of a sudden came into some personal money. That's not a good thing. So if you're really looking to do something good and you're applying for a grant, that's the right way to go. If you're looking to get this free money and use it the wrong way, stay out of this industry.
How did you get started with the idea of starting Grant Watch? Because I think it's one of the things that I think is the most confusing, like you just said, it's trying to figure out what's out there, first of all, and then secondly, do you even qualify, which is, I think, something that we want to go down. But that has to start with some sort of idea of like, I need to figure this out for at least myself or somebody else. How did this even begin?
Well, what happened was I was teaching special education at the time, class for mostly handicapped. They don't call it that. This was, in the 80s. And I had 10 junior high school students with a paraprofessional, and I had to prepare them for the RCTs and some other government exams. And this was all about written communication skills. At that point, if I would correct a paper, the kid would tear it up, throw it in my face, and I'm not doing that. And that would be the end of it. So I had to solve this problem somehow. And I started reading, and I found that there was something called word processing at that point. We were giving up our typewriters and moving on. And I said to my special ed supervisor, gee, if I could teach them word processing, they'd have so much fun and they'd want to correct their work because that's what word processing is about. And he said, well, there is a computer room in the building. I went to my principal. He said, Libby, nobody's taking your class. It's a great idea, but nobody's going to walk into your classroom. Somehow you're controlling it. Nobody else can. So he said, well, if you want to do it, go into the computer room, but you're going to have to teach yourself enough to teach them. I go in there, I get all ready and everything. And those big clunky Tandy Model 4s did not have enough memory at that point. End of discussion. Started teaching myself basic programming. BASIC was a programming language. I taught the kids how to pick lottery numbers, variables, and that was about it. Make something move across the screen. But I didn't give up. I went to my special ed supervisor. He went to the school district. They wanted a budget. I created a budget of what we needed to do. And they said, well, there's no money, but there is a grant available from Tandy. If you can prove that the Model 100, and if anybody goes and looks that up, it was about the size of an iPad with a screen this wide going across. It was a green screen. And they wanted us to prove that the Model 100 could be used in an educational environment. That was exactly what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to teach word processing. So I went every day after school to the district office, and they taught me how to write grants. And they had said that they applied for it previously and they never won. And I won 1 in 4 in the United States because I had passion. I wanted to do this. And that is the key to writing grants. You have to be totally invested. And we got $15,000, a big dot matrix printer, a Tandy Model 4, I believe, and we got enough laptops for the classroom. I don't even think they called them laptops at that point. They were Model 100s, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So I learned that. And then every time a grant came available, the school district would send it to me. I won Commodore 64s to complement the classroom. So there I was learning to write grants. And somebody in the school district put an application in my mailbox for a job they had needing a grant writer at the school district office. And I went there, and for 2 years, I wrote grants at the school district. The superintendent used to say, do this, touch Libby. She has the Midas touch. To the point where, there I was, and I was winning. I won about $11 million worth of grants that were going into the schools within the school district. And then I went back to the classroom, became a magnet school teacher for business, careers, and computers. And there I was. And I opened up my own business.
I love that. I love what you just said, which is your first grant is what everybody else should be thinking about, which is, does it do what you want it to do? And I think one of the fundamental issues that a lot of nonprofits who don't do a lot of grant writing, they see the opportunity for money and they leap at it. And that comes with a lot of things that get your organization into a little bit of a hairy space that you're now required to do the things that you got the money for that are outside of your scope. Can you give us kind of like a rundown of maybe questions you would ask yourself on applying for a grant that may not be absolutely perfect, and what you have got to a little watch out for?
Well, the first thing is always, do you meet the eligibility requirements? So every application has different eligibility requirements because the funding source has a mission and a vision, and they want you to run a program that meets with theirs. So just as an example, if you are a faith-based organization and you look up this funding source and they've given to a different faith all along many times, why would you even apply there? They're saying they're faith-based, but they gear themselves towards that faith, right? So you really have to read the eligibility and then go back and look up who they funded in the past. Now, like you said, a nonprofit can find a grant and then they just want to apply and it's outside their scope. So I don't say no to that. If there's something within the program that they want you to implement that is in your scope, then go down the block, find the nearest nonprofit that you respect that does that, and create a coalition. Create a memorandum of understanding and work together. And that's really a good grant because that's very solid. You can put in the resumes, the CVs of your staff and show the experience in those parts of the program. And then you have the other nonprofit that has great experience in that other section. So you don't have to give it up. You also don't have to find a grant that does everything. You can apply for a few little smaller grants and put your whole program together that way.
Yeah. I think that's such a great way to think about this too. I think we're always constantly trying to figure out, I need my money and this is going to be my thing and nobody else can share. Where you look at maybe a nonprofit across the street or down the road that combined your powers, you're going to be able to solve the thing that you're trying to solve in the first place. And it may take a little bit of partnership to do. It may think outside of the box and what you're normally doing, which is going to make your nonprofit stronger in the first place. And I also really like the idea that not one grant is going to solve everything. You can piecemeal some of this together, and while at the same time, train yourself to be a really good grant writer and kind of a seeker of grants that match the things that you want to do. So you're attuning yourself to things that are out there, which is really great. If I'm a nonprofit, if I'm a small or medium-sized nonprofit, I've never done a grant before, what's the type of personality, the person you want to look for internally that might be a good fit for a grant writer or somebody to take the reins of this?
So the first thing is they have to have the English skills. Because if you submit a grant and things are misspelled, the grammar is off, there's no continuity, it's going to go in the trash because nobody's going to want to read it. And they're also going to think, you can't even submit an application that's decent. Should we give you money? How are you going to run the program? Okay, so that's first. Second quality would be somebody that really is invested in your organization. Somebody who has passion, right? And then somebody that works well with others, because this is not a one-person job, writing a grant. You need to reach out to any department that's involved, that's going to be involved in the program for the planning of it. The budget, and another thing is the budget. So the person you ask to take this on needs to know how to use Excel or something similar to it to be able to create a budget, modify that budget, work with everybody, share it, have all those skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like a grant, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. It's going to take a team effort. And I think it can get really frustrating if it's one person who's taking on the whole thing and their skill isn't math or budget, or their skill isn't research or personality in order to kind of build a relationship or rapport within some other group. Maybe a great writer, but you need all kind of three of those things. How much is the element of storytelling a real asset into grant writing? Or is it more valuable to go, this is what we need, this is what it does, this is our outcomes? Or is there a blend of both? What does that look like?
So the storytelling might come into the needs because you want to go and show that wherever you're located, that there is a need for your program. Otherwise, why should somebody even buy into it? Basically, you're saying, hey, funding source, we need this money. This is why we need it. This fits your mission and vision. as well as ours. Let's partner up with this, right? So in the needs section, there's a lot of storytelling, but it's storytelling with those statistics and best practices. So that person has to, I used to go to the library. This is all before we had everything on the internet. And I would come home with 10 books. And by the time I was done, I could have quotes of best practices from all of the books and footnote it. Things are a little different now. It's much easier. You can look on the internet, you can copy it and everything else. But this all comes together.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You have a wonderful set of letters that I'd like you to explain, because I found it very insightful if you're trying to think about sort of a steps by steps program as you're sort of building a grant process, or you're thinking about having grants roll out. It is the PMF.
You got it.
Explain this to everybody, because it will really laser focus you into a framework that kind of puts all this together. So can you explain, Libby, the PMF?
All right. So what happened was I started doing all this PR to let people know about Grant Watch. Mm-hmm. And I like to speak without notes. So I had to figure out a way to memorize this. and instead of all these stickies all over my office, which I would be looking this way and that way and that way, I came up with this acronym PMF: Passion, Maps, and Folders. So if you're going to go into the grant writing world, you need to remember that, and you need to start. So passion we spoke about, and that's how I won my grant. And somewhere in the bookcase behind me is the original grant that I submitted for Tandy. I saved it, and it's just stayed with me all along. So your passion has to jump off the page. That's, if you don't have it, don't bother. Honestly, it's just a waste. If you have it, then go for it, because it's going to show and you're going to shine. Maps, that's how you break out your program. Now, when you think in terms of a grant, now every grant application, RFP, request for proposals, is going to look a little different, but most of them are going to ask for the same things: the needs, the goals, the objectives, the activities that are going to get you to the evaluation, right? So, and there's going to be a budget and an organizational structure and capacity. So when we think about that, if we take an Excel sheet and we think about the need, why are you going to mention the need for something? If I'm going to talk about my neighborhood and I'm looking for a grant for preschool, why would I talk about that the trees are breaking up the cement in my neighborhood? No reason to bring that in, especially there's limited space. And now I confuse the reader. Everything in my needs has to match my goals, and has to match my objectives, and has to match my activities and my evaluation. And everything mentioned all along must be in the budget. Don't put anything in the budget that you didn't mention, because, if you put something in front of a parent, child puts something in front of a parent and says, I need money to do this, and then but they ask for something that's not even part of it, it doesn't make sense. So you have to think that everything lines up. So that's why I talk about maps. And you really play with your Excel sheet, go straight across, have another tab for your budget, keep putting it in, and go that way. Now, just an example, I want to quickly say, let's say your preschool needs a director, but the program you're asking for is an after-school program with parents and children reading. Your director is not going to spend their entire 1 FTE running that program. So you have to think, what portion of that director's time is going into the program, and that's what you can put in your budget. So you have to think everything in terms of that and break it up. Now, we talk about folders, that's how you get ready. So while I say passion, maps, and folders, if you're thinking of writing a grant, you need to start. What do we need in a folder? We need our SAM registration with the federal government. We need a DUNS number. These things take time. Start it now. If it's a preschool, you probably need the blueprints. You probably need the rental, the lease or the ownership of it. You probably need something. Well, in New York, you have to show that you're not within a certain distance to a gas station, right? I don't know. Every state is different.
Yeah.
You need the CVs of everyone. You need the job descriptions of everyone. So think of anything that you might need and put it in the folder. So one thing we like to do at Grant Watch is we have grant news. And if that's part of Grant Watch, that's the blog. And if there's a nonprofit that's running a great program, we will interview you if you ask us and write an article about your program. Now, once that you have that program, you can take that article and put it in your folder, because these things go into the appendices of a grant. So you want to put everything. Now, also in your folder goes all the stats for your community. So if there are reading scores or math scores, you want to put that in the folder. Whatever your subject matter is, you want to look for every piece of stats for that area, every piece of data, put it in the folder. You don't know when you're going to need it, and update that folder. So I always like to say, have a hard copy, have something on a computer disk, save it, because things get erased and you always want to have that folder. So passion, maps, and folders.
My lizard fundraising brain, that's not a grant writing brain,
okay,
immediately goes to, this is brilliant to have as a fundraiser when you are having a conversation with whomever or whatever sponsorship proposal is having everything, the numbers, job descriptions and proposals and program descriptions, et cetera. Wouldn't this be a nice thing to have at your organization at all times? So no matter what you needed to prepare, you'd have something here. Libby's genius into creating this, because this is going to help you in every aspect of your fundraising life, let alone grants. And it's really difficult and probably frustrating is if you started a grant and you're like, oh crap, now I need these 3 things. And then you go get those 3 things and you go back to your grant. And then you go, oh, I need these 5 things. And you got to go find those 5 things.
Right.
And then by the time you find everything, the grant window is already closed, or you get into that moment where you're like, I've got 6 hours to submit it and I haven't even started yet. And then that's why I think people hate or loathe grants, is that the preparation stuff is going to make this a hell of a lot easier coming down the line there.
We have uhelp.com, which is the crowdfunding arm of the business. And at this point, we only allow nonprofits to run a campaign. You'd be surprised how many nonprofits don't have their final letter of determination from the IRS. They send us the EIN number, that first EIN letter you get, but that's not your 501c3 status, right? And they don't have it. Mm-hmm. And we get it for them because we know where it is on the IRS website, but right. They should have it in their folder.
Right. Yeah, it's a good reminder just to get the basics of the basics down about what your organization does, what's the impact that you make, and really what you're trying to achieve with any program and service that you have. And I know you know it as an executive director. I know you know it as a fundraising director, but does anybody else? You spend, a lot of organizations spend, ungodly amounts of hours and time and money having a strategic plan, but that thing also sits on your shelf. You never use it. This type of stuff,
right?
At a moment's notice, if a donor comes to says to you, "Hey, so how many? What's the program look like, and how many are you going to have impacted this year?" Let me get my folder out, so I've got all this information. Or, hey, I need that 990, or I need that, these numbers for you for a donation or a gift. You've got it in the folder.
What about send me something about your organization? So your organizational capacity, that one paragraph or 2 goes into every grant. Right. Or how do you manage funds? I mean, that's a big thing from the federal government. So are 2 people signing your checks? Do you have an accountant? Do you have a special management, financial management organization, whatever it is? That's another paragraph that's boilerplate. So all these things also go into the folder.
Well, and I think this is what you learn after doing a couple of these, where you're like, okay, these 10 things or these 20 things I'm going to always need, and everything else is sort of, negotiable or sort of creatively done for whatever the thing is. But that's why doing grants and actually executing and trying it and starting it is going to allow you to make sure that this is not a totally a foreign or alien thing to your organization. And once you get it right, it's great because now you've got funding from a different source. You've got another leg of the stool for your funding and for a budget, et cetera. Now, everyone doesn't win a grant, and you'll get rejected at least more than once, I'm assuming.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? That's got to be a big hit. You spent all this time, Libby, and it's like, oh, I did this and then this, and then you get a big fat no. How do I come out of this depression that I have had after all the effort I've put into this grant?
But that effort is not gone. That's the point.
What?
Now you have, first of all, you have lots of pieces that have been approved by your board, so you don't have to write them again. Take them, save them in the folder, save them on your computer. That's first thing. Then you can go back to some funding sources like the federal government or a state and say, hey, can I have the notes for my review? And you can get them, and then you may not want to show them to your supervisor if you really messed up, but it's such a learning experience.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you a story?
Yes, please. Please.
I wrote this grant together with someone who came to me with this great idea. Okay. It was before the holidays and we were going away on vacation. So I left it with her. I left the grant with her. We didn't win. And we were really doing it like this was our idea. It was a great idea. And the government really needed it. It was to merge all sorts of objectives from 3 different sources together for preschool. Okay. Because there was state, there was federal, there was local, there was governor's thing. And we had the whole plan. What happened? I wrote for the report. We lost 15 points because there was no budget. Why was there no budget? Because when she formatted the grant, she didn't follow directions, which I left clearly as to the size of the font and the margins. So when she did it on her computer, it took up more spaces, more pages, and then it says there is no budget because the minute you run out of pages with the federal government, they just take them and throw the others in the garbage.
That's really funny.
Okay, so that grant could have been applied for again.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk about a little bit about I've made a mistake and oh no, now what? Is there an appeal process? Is there a thing, or it's a done and you get next year or next time it opens up as an opportunity, or you submit and you're like, oh crap. What if you have an oh crap moment? I shouldn't have pressed send yet, but now what?
That really depends because it depends who the funding source is. The federal government, it's not going to happen. There's very strict deadlines. The state, if they didn't get enough applicants for something, then a state may say, oh, we'll look at yours after we finish the others. We understand. City could be the same way, but it really depends how they're structured. A foundation might say, we'll look at it next year. We understand you made a mistake, or you may not be able to reach anyone. There's no way to know, but if you don't try, you're not going to know. So try.
I love it. A lot of people are very hesitant to even contact any of the grantees because it's one of those nebulous things. And they're like, I don't know who those people are. And I don't even know if there's somebody who would pick up the other end of the phone. Is it appropriate when you have questions and you have questions on either the execution of your grant or the creation of your grant proposal? Is it appropriate, and how do you contact the individuals or the groups who are running the grants to ask for help or have a question answered so you can just finally get started or finished? What does that look like?
Some state and city government grants will say that there's a Q&A deadline, so you can submit your questions. Now, the only thing about submitting your questions you should be afraid of is not formulating your questions so you sound intelligent. So if you didn't read the entire application and now you're going to ask a question, that's going to be a negative on you. Mm-hmm. If you've read everything and you're asking an intelligent question, go for it because somebody else has the same question.
Right.
If it's a foundation, there's usually an email address, and it could be that somebody made a mistake. And you're finding the mistake. It's happened. And then they will then put out some changes.
Yeah. What's the best grant that you have seen awarded through GrantWatch, and what has been the most fun one to sort of celebrate with an organization that went to your site, did all the hard work, got the grant, and then you got to which I imagine is probably the high of highs of running this organization, of the you get to celebrate with these individuals.
Well, what we do is, okay, so if you look at the testimonial page on GrantWatch, we get videos sent to us and, thanking us with the grant, telling us about the grant and what the money was used for. We actually send them this mug over here as a celebratory gift. I don't know if you can see it. So that's how that works. I think I should celebrate the one that I wrote years ago, which is Child Health Plus. And that was in Staten Island. And that was the first Child Health Plus grant that was won at that time. We took all different nonprofits and put them together at a large table and divided up the work, because that particular grant wanted you to find the children that were in need of medical insurance throughout the entire borough of Staten Island. So by getting all different cultures, all different races, all different religions, all different languages together, we were able to do it. And that was refunded years and years. So that was the best.
I love that. And again, it goes to prove kind of what you were saying earlier, that find your partners, right. Find individual groups that match kind of your mission or your vision or your values or the things that you want to solve in the community. And you don't have to go it alone, which is kind of, I love this theme here, which is like, if you don't have to go to a library alone. You've got GrantWatch. You don't have to go and submit things alone. You've got partners. You don't need to worry about or be the only person in your organization doing it. You need other people to do this. So if you're a grant writer listening, or you're getting into grant writing, or you've been assigned to grant writing, I hope you took away a little bit about hey, this is like a village bit. It's going to take a lot of people to help you sort of significantly get pointed.
You know what? There's one thing. You might find out when you're putting your partners together that you shouldn't be the lead organization, and have humility, because if another organization has managed a lot of federal funds, you might want them to be the lead and you be a partner or a subcontractor, whatever it is, and you'll still get your piece, but you'll get funded.
Yeah, I love that. Well, again, that I think is a great reminder to have an abundance mindset too, to say, listen, this is not going to go all to you. This is not all to you. This is a rising tide. This is going to help a lot of organizations. And if you have to step back and kind of let somebody else take a lead on that, I love that. That's a brilliant way of sort of thinking about that. I know that there is going to be a lot of people who want to go and find out how on earth they get connected with you, they get connected with GrantWatch, but they might not be familiar with how to get to said places. Libby, how on earth do we contact you and GrantWatch?
Say grantwatch.com and support@grantwatch.com. So, and then we'll respond. There's a chat, there's email there, there's a phone number, which you can read off for me because I don't have it in front of me. 561-249-4129. Did I get it right?
If it is, what will be right is in the show notes, that's for sure. But I love that anyway. And here's what, when you go to there, it is a very intuitive site. It's got ways, if you're an organization, if you're a government entity, what kind of grant are you trying to get? It's a very quick and easy, and it kind of scrolls through nicely. There's a boatload of information there. There's a lot of learning opportunities and things that you can kind of get there too. So please take a little bit of time to do that. So again, everything will be in the show notes. Make sure you click on that. By the way, if you're clicking around the internet and you haven't subscribed to this show, you probably should. You're going to get high quality guests like Libby coming on for sure. This is the type of thing you're going to get all the time here on the show. Libby, thank you so much for what you do. First of all, thank you for your perspective. I love the how this started to where it is, sort of understanding with the theme of do it and prep yourself, because there's so many more applicable pieces to this folder piece. That is, I think, the brilliant nugget of diamond that we just kind of took away, is that even if you lose or don't get the grant, you still have an abundance of information. You get to go with your other donors or other supporters, and you get to go try again because you got all the information, which is brilliant.
And there are new grants every day.
Every day. And you'll find them on GrantWatch.com. Thank you so much for your perspective. Thanks so much for your enthusiasm. Thanks so much for the joy you bring to something that's very confusing and very scary to a lot of organizations. But most of all, thank you for being a guest here on the official Do Good Better podcast.
Thank you.
Look, as someone who listens to the show, you know that I love helping small and medium-sized nonprofits. That's why we bring on the awesome experts and guests that get to talk to you about how to make your organization more awesome. So I've got a deal for you. I would like to help you. I would like to work with you. So if you go to dogooduniversity.com, that's dogood.university.com, and you register for one of the courses, I'm going to send you my best-selling book, Fundraise Awesomer, a practical guide to staying sane while doing good for free, because I really want you to do amazing work. Listen, dogooduniversity.com. Go pick out something, whether it's a board training or a gratitude training or whatever webinar you want to choose. Use the promo code podcast, take 25% off of anything that you purchase, and I'm going to throw in a book as well, because I want you to do awesome, I want you to do awesomer, and I want you to do good better. Go to dogooduniversity.com today.